Hello, Theodore Shoebat here, giving you guys another message that you will not hear at church. I guarantee that. Indonesia is being praised as this epitome of democracy and liberty. It is being praised and adulated as a country that all the Muslim world should model themselves after. It is being highly esteemed and praised and really revered as the great example, a great exemplary of a Muslim country that is filled with freedom and great democratic sentiments and values. Well, I'm here to tell you otherwise. The government of Indonesia has been involved in some very, very nefarious and violent activity. And by violent activity, I mean stuff that is reminiscent to what the Japanese did in Nanking. The Indonesian government, just as recent as the 1970s all the way up to the 1990s, have persecuted Catholics, Christian Catholics in the country of East Timor, which is right on the edge of Indonesia. And they have slaughtered Christians, pulled their hearts out. They beheaded people, decapitated them, ripped open the bellies of Catholics and pulled their intestines out. They shot people, bayoneted people, injected men with sulfuric acid, injected women with contraception so they could no longer have children. These are genocides that the Indonesian government committed. They're still in denial of it till this day. And what I'm going to show you guys are a number of clips documenting the horrors that the Indonesian government did. And it's just going to show us how sinister Indonesia is. But not only that, it's going to show us what sinister country, this country of Indonesia, we are going to have to face in the near future in the coming world war with the Islamic Empire. Play the clips.
On 13 December 1983, the military took my brothers and killed in front of my eyes. And they pull out, after they kill, they pull out their heart and show to us that's a dirty heart. Now he must agree the integration.
There is a fear. All the eyes says it all. You don't have to talk to the people of East Timor. Even the little children shows in their eyes, in their face, that they never smile. There's not one single family that has not lost a member of their family. They always have a story to say in terms of women being raped or a young boy would be just snatched from his house and never been able to see it again. And this kind of torture has constantly happened, and it is on a daily basis.
Timor is a land of crosses, crosses etched against the sky, crosses on peaks, crosses on hillsides. This is the grave of just one family, all killed on the same day. This was Greg Shackleton's last report, the day before he was murdered.
Why, they ask, are the Indonesians invading us? Why, they ask, if the Indonesians believe that Fretilin is communist, do they not send a delegation to Dili to find out? Why, they ask, are the Australians not helping us? When the Japanese invaded, they did help us. Why, they ask, are the Portuguese not helping us? We're still a Portuguese colony. Who, they ask, will pay for the terrible damage to our homes?
We look like being the last people left in the town. In the meantime, we've daubed our house with the word Australia in red and the Australian flag. We're hoping it will afford us some protection. This is Greg Shackleton for 7 National News at Ballybog.
There's witnesses who've said they heard the Australian journalists shouting, "Australian journalists non-combat." Then they said they heard fire and there was no more sound.
What happened to Greg and his companions?
I don't know whether it happened to Greg or which of the 5, but the majority of them were hung up by their feet. Their sexual organs were removed and pushed into their mouths. They were stabbed with the short throwing knives that the Indonesian soldiers carry, and it isn't known whether they asphyxiated or whether they bled to death or whether some of them got stabbed in the heart and died quickly. The feeling was that because this is quite a common way to punish people in East Timor, bodies are often found this way, And so the Timorese have a fair idea that it takes a long time. They asphyxiate usually.
We were learning about it from hard, firm reports from people on the scene in East Timor. Reports of people being herded into school buildings by Indonesian soldiers, with the buildings set on fire, and anyone trying to get out being shot, most of the people being burned alive. People being herded into fields and machine gunned. People being hunted down in the mountains, so anyone out there was in what amounted to a free fire zone.
Out of our clan, which at that time in '74, as I know it, as I knew then, was out of 5,000, and the number have reduced to about over 500.
From 5,000 to 500?
Yes. It's very, very reduced.
That's extraordinary slaughter of
people. It is. And that was a massive, massive bombardment that took place. People even said that the whole rocks become white because all the trees and grass that grow on the rocks were all blown off.
We were providing most of the weaponry, helicopters, logistical support, food, uniforms, ammunition, all the expendables that the Indonesians needed to conduct this war.
That is the village that in 1983, more or less 400 of population, 400 of population were killed by Indonesian troops.
They were all buried here in a mass grave.
There is no any cross. They put only the stone and bamboos because the population afraid that when they put a cross here or a mark here, Indonesian troop will arrest the person who put cross here.
Another form of population control is contraception, given without the permission or knowledge of women, especially the enforced use of the contraceptive drug Depo-Provera.
People are forced to have Depo-Provera injections. For example, there were schoolgirls, teenagers, who were injected with Depo-Provera so that they don't have babies anymore. And what they were told was that there was some kind of anti-tetanus injection.
This doctor went to East Timor on our behalf and secretly investigated the use of enforced birth control.
Well, I found in one clinic a very large number of people were being given birth control, I think out of all proportion to the other efforts that were being made, medical efforts that were being made. And I heard many people say that the birth control injection was being given without any explanation to the people who were receiving it as to what it was.
What are they injected with?
Depo-Provera. And again, one clinic claimed to have 500 women being injected, and I found that a very large number, given that very little else seemed to be going on at the clinic.
When you move people away from their sacred land, away from places where they live for thousands of years, into lower areas infested by mosquito, they are not able to move out of those camps to cultivate, for instance. There is a curfew, and because they cannot cultivate, there is no food, and there is no food, they die.
In the late 1970s and early 80s, famine claimed many thousands of lives in resettlement camps where people were denied adequate land to grow food. Although we saw no starvation, a great many people were terribly malnourished. Jose Amarin, now in exile, was forced as a boy to watch his father being tortured.
I was asked to come in order, all of us, to see my father the time when he was tortured. And then he was tortured by Indonesian. We are looking at the action, and we are warned by the Indonesians that, look, if you kids, for the coming time being, you follow the example of your father, you are against the Indonesians, you will have the same sort like your father.
What did they do to your father?
They tortured him for several times.
What did they do?
They punched him and beaten him and put their fingers to manipulate the stomach and the intestines of my father, because usually the Indonesian troops are trained with, they call silat or karate, and they are used usually to this kind of torture. And they put their fingers to the stomach of my father, and starting, how can I say in English, like this.
After they stopped shooting, those who had survived, the ones who could have been saved because they were only wounded in the legs and arms, they were stabbed with bayonets. The ones still inside the cemetery who were still breathing, but lying on the ground, their heads were crushed with rocks until they died.
So you actually saw the Indonesian soldiers bayoneting the survivors, did you?
Yeah.
They picked up all the bodies, including me, and took us away in a truck. It was a Mercedes.
The bodies were loaded onto a Hino Mercedes truck. According to my colleague, who himself unloaded the bodies, some of them are still alive. Not all had died.
And then they separated us, the wounded from the ones who were not wounded, and we were taken to the hospital. On the way we were continually beaten.
Once at the hospital, they were not unloaded as human beings. They were just pushed down from the truck and spread on the ground. Some of the victims were pretending to be dead, but the Indonesians spotted them and drove the truck over their bodies. Even so, not all of them died immediately. Some still survived.
And then they took us to the mortuary. There were a lot of my friends who were still alive. They weren't dead. And I saw with my own eyes that amongst the bodies that were piled high like this, there were children, women, and old people. But the majority were young, all students. Suddenly I heard steps approaching the door, so I laid down again, pretending to be dead.
And then there was an attempt to inject them with sulfuric acid. Because it's really strong, it can kill. But the Indonesian troops didn't do this again because the people screamed so loudly. But it was an attempt to kill them. These medicines were taken from Demkes, the health department.
Two soldiers came in. One of them picked up a rock, and the other had a jar with some pills. They ordered those who were alive to stand up, and the soldier with the rock smashed one of them on the head and his chest. Not long afterwards, he died.
Indonesia has the 19th most powerful military in the world. It is going to be, next to Turkey, Pakistan, and Iran, really the most significant, amongst the most significant players militarily in fighting Christendom in the final crusade, that is World War III. So get ready, everyone. Be prepared to see Indonesia rise as a Sharia nation. It's going to rise as a very powerful Muslim country. You just heard some theology. God bless and God be with us.